Caitlin Clark was assaulted yesterday in her very first playoff game in the WNBA.
Look, I'm not pissed to the point where I'm annoyed and I'm going to call people out their names, or especially people that I love, like the person I'm about to talk about in a few minutes. She struggled with physical defense she's faced at the professional level and voiced frustration with the league's officiating, recently telling reporters, quote, "I feel like I'm getting hammered and everybody is physical with me, and opponents get away with things that other people don't get away with." That's what Caitlin Clark said, that it was a cheap shot. It was not a basketball play. She should have been ejected, number one. Number two, there should have been a fine that was incurred thereafter. Number three, not to say that there won't be, or hasn't been at this moment in time, I don't know of one. I know the team was fined for media availability purposes because people weren't available to talk.
Did you catch what happened to Caitlin Clark? The WNBA superstar took a brutal eye poke from Dijonai, Carrington, and now everyone's asking, was it intentional? And why didn't the refs make the call? This incident is causing a stir throughout the entire league.
It's important that we point this out. One of the things that I brought up this morning in talking about Caitlin Clark is that some of the players, you want to use the word jealousy, fine. You want to use the word envy, fine.
Picture this. It's a high-stakes playoff game, the crowd's going wild, and then bam! Carrington's finger hits Clark's eye. The arena falls silent as Clark is visibly in pain. But here's the kicker. No foul call. Can you believe it? The fans are losing their minds, and honestly, who can blame them?
And because of her box office attraction, it's generating more eyeballs to the WNBA product, therefore more revenue for the WNBA product. Don't you think y'all are going to benefit from that too? Look at the big picture. That's what I was talking about when I was talking about it this morning on my day job, First Take on ESPN, every weekday morning from 10 a.m. to 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. A rising tide raises all boats.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Was this just a freak accident, or is there more to the story? You might think it's clear-cut, but trust me, the truth might shock you. This moment isn't just about one play, it could shift everything for the WNBA. Are you ready to find out how?
But damn it, in the first 2 minutes of this game, this Dijonai Carrington stabbed Caitlin Clark with her fingernails right in the eye.
You thought the eye poke was bad? Wait until you see how it affected Caitlin Clark's game. A complete meltdown on the court. But let's put Clark aside for a moment. This whole incident could reshape women's basketball forever. How? You won't see this coming.
If Caitlin Clark is the quote-unquote savior, if she's the golden girl, milk it. If I remember correctly, Caitlin Clark signed a $28 million endorsement deal. When nobody in the WNBA getting that, nobody's gotten that yet but her. A'ja Wilson is the superstar in the NBA. In the WNBA. She's a two-time champion. This girl is legit. She's the real deal. And those kind of endorsements and all of that stuff ain't come her way.
Remember how Clark was dominating the league, effortlessly dropping 20 points a game? Well, after that eye poke, everything changed, and I mean everything. Her scoring plummeted to just 11 points per game, and her shooting dropped to a dismal 23.5%. It's like watching a completely different player out there.
No foul call. There was no real discussion of it on the ESPN broadcast. ESPN wrote a story after the game that did not mention that the biggest star in the history of the WNBA, the first woman to ever be the biggest star in American sports, was assaulted 2 minutes into the game on a dirty play with one of these women with these long fake fingernails that stabbed her in the eye.
Now you might be thinking, come on, it's just one bad game, right? Wrong. This slump hit Clark hard, and it wasn't just about the stats. The frustration was written all over her face. Even she admitted, "I felt like I got good shots, they just didn't go down." It was a tough time for that to happen. Can you imagine the league's rising star struggling to find her rhythm when it matters most?
The kind of stuff that's happening and has been happening over the last few months is because of Caitlin Clark. I got some of the stats in front of me to validate it. Because you see, I bring receipts. And I'll get to why I'm really pissed off in a few minutes.
But here's where it gets really interesting. This wasn't just about Clark. Her teammates were scrambling. Imagine building your entire game plan around a superstar, and suddenly she's not at 100%. How do you adapt on the fly in the middle of the playoffs? It's like trying to fly a plane with one engine out.
Do you think that had any impact on the game? Do you think that your meal ticket should be stabbed in the eye intentionally? On the court, 2 minutes into the game, and there's no problem here? It's not worthy of discussion? I read this ESPN story. Alyssa Thomas had a triple-double, and so-and-so scored X number of points, and the Connecticut Sun knock off the fever. And I'm reading the story, I'm like, where's the mention of the fact that the Michael Jordan of the WNBA was assaulted?
And the fans? Oh boy, they were not having it. Social media exploded faster than a buzzer beater. Everyone, and even their grandmas, were calling for the WNBA to take action. Where were the refs? Why wasn't there a foul call? The outrage was off the charts.
Not exaggerating. This Caitlin Clark's trying to pass the ball in the first 2 minutes of the game, and this woman swats at the basketball and somehow decides to turn her hand down and her fingernails and jab them right into the eye of Caitlin Clark.
But here's the kicker. This incident isn't just about one player or one game anymore. It's shaking the very foundation of the WNBA. We're talking player safety, officiating standards, the whole 9 yards. This eye poke may have opened up a can of worms the league can't close. The WNBA is in hot water, and it's about to boil over. This isn't just about protecting stars anymore. It's about the very soul of women's basketball. How far can players push before it's too far? The WNBA's next move could redefine the sport as we know it.
Caitlin, could you tell us a little bit about your eye, the hit, if it affected you, how it affected you, and through the rest of the game? Thanks.
Yeah, obviously got me pretty good in the eye.
Think about it. One moment we're watching an intense playoff game, and the next we're diving into issues that could change women's basketball forever. It's not just about Caitlin Clark's eye anymore. This incident has cracked open a whole new can of worms. Let's talk player safety. The WNBA is walking a tightrope here. On one side, you have the intensity that makes the game exciting. On the other, the urgent need to protect their stars. It's like trying to keep a pot from boiling over while cranking up the heat. How do you maintain the fierce nature of the game without risking the well-being of your players?
She's going to face a level of racism from black players, and she's going to face a level of hostility from lesbian players because she's not on team LGBTQ. She's a Catholic. She's got some boyfriend. She's going to walk into an extremely hostile environment.
But here's where it gets really messy. Some people are whispering about racial tensions. Yeah, you heard that right. Clark is a white player in a league where most players are black. Now, nobody is saying race caused this incident, but some folks are wondering if her success might be rubbing certain players the wrong way. It's a touchy subject, but we can't ignore it.
The difference, this is what you pointed out, and I think this is real, and it's the real difference between men and women at our core. The women will be very jealous, and that, I think, is going to be a monster problem. I hope they get over it for the winning. Guys like to win, even if they're not the star. Well, great, we'll get a championship. Well, everybody jump on Michael Jordan's back. Everybody jump on Larry Bird's back. I don't know if that'll happen with Caitlin Clark.
Now, the WNBA has a big decision to make. How they handle this could set the tone for years to come. We're talking about more than just one foul. This could change how they deal with aggressive play, how they protect their stars, and maybe even how they market the league. It's like they're rewriting the rule book on the fly.
No foul call. No refs stopping the game to go look. Is this a flagrant? None of that. Just everybody moved on. Your biggest star, your meal ticket, the reason why you have relevancy just got stabbed and assaulted and nothing.
And get this. It's not just about the WNBA. Whatever they decide could trickle down to college basketball, high school, and even your local rec league. We're talking about changing the culture of women's basketball from the top down. That's huge.
Who's the number 1 overall pick? Huh, Aaron? Who's the number 1 overall pick? Say it louder. Caitlin Clark, the number 1 overall pick. This is coincidence, huh? Is this coincidence, huh? Of course it's not. Highest rated draft in history because Caitlin Clark. WNBA TV ratings for this season. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know it skyrocketed? ABC announced it had its most viewed opening weekend doubleheader ever with 2 games combined and an average 1.5 million viewers. That marks a 143% increase from a WNBA doubleheader on ABC a year ago. Did you know that? Did you know that? Did you know that?
But here's the kicker. The WNBA is at a crossroads. They've got to make some tough calls, and fast. Do they crack down hard on aggressive play, or do they risk losing viewers who thrive on the intensity? Do they address the racial elephant in the room, or pretend it doesn't exist? These aren't easy questions, but they must be answered.
And Dijonai has a history with Caitlin Clark. Like many of these girls in the WNBA, but she's at the top of the list along with Kennedy Carter in Chicago and Angel Reese. Those 3. But here's earlier in the season, Dijonai Carrington mocking Caitlin Clark on the court, played a very physical game with her back then too. And look, Does Caitlin Clark do some histrionics, some flopping, and perhaps, I'm giving them this out on what happened yesterday. Perhaps if Caitlin Clark wasn't known as a flopper, the refs would have taken it more seriously when she got stabbed in the eye and fell to the court.
One thing's for sure, the WNBA can't just sweep this under the rug. Fans are watching, players are waiting, and the whole basketball world is holding its breath. Whatever they decide is going to shape the future of women's basketball. We might be looking at a whole new game. The dust is settling, but the landscape of women's basketball may never be the same. Fans are demanding action, players are speaking out, and the WNBA is listening. What's about to happen could change the game forever.
That tells you that before Caitlin Clark came along, it wasn't nearly as popular. It doesn't mean it wasn't growing in popularity over the last 2 to 3 years. But 3 years ago, WNBA was an afterthought. A little bit less than that, there were thoughts of this team being defunct and going away. Nobody cared.
You thought the drama was over? Think again. This eye poke incident isn't just fading away, it's sparking a revolution in women's basketball. And get this, it's not just the fans who are fired up. Players, coaches, and even the league itself are all joining forces to push for some serious changes.
Early in the game, and Caitlin mentioned in her first answer about the refs, so is that something you can talk about?
Yeah, I just feel like there's some body contact, sometimes these guys are coming off screens and movements where they're just getting bodied a lot. I thought that was happening early. I thought AB was getting, not getting some calls down low that she probably should have. But at the end of the day, it's not about the officiating tonight for sure. I mean, we've got to be better defensively.
Let's talk about the fans first. They're not just sitting back and complaining on social media anymore. Nope, they're calling for real action. We're talking fines, suspensions, the whole 9 yards. They want the WNBA to show that this kind of behavior won't fly. Can you imagine the impact if the league actually listens? But here's where it gets really interesting. The players themselves are stepping up to the plate. They're not just focused on winning games anymore, they're speaking out about safety, clearer rules, and ensuring that everyone feels protected on the court. It's like they're saying, hey, we love this game, but we need to feel safe playing it.
Caitlin, could you tell us a little bit about your eye, the hit, if it affected you, how it affected you, and through the rest of the game? Thanks.
Yeah, obviously got me pretty good in the eye. We struggled to get stops at times, but also the clock getting messed up. It was just one thing after the next, but yeah, overall it didn't bother me. Obviously it didn't feel too good when it happened, but it is what it is.
Now, you might be thinking, sure, but will the WNBA actually do anything? Well, hold on to your seats, because word on the street is that they're seriously considering some big changes. We're talking about a complete overhaul of how they handle physical play and player conduct. It's like they're rewriting the rulebook right before our eyes.
A bit confused, perhaps in preparation for the game, there's she does some flop and we don't know what to put. I'm gonna give them that small out, but that's not what I believe. This is inexcusable, and Dijonai Carrington needs to be suspended for game 2.
But here's the kicker. All this drama might actually be a good thing for women's basketball. Yeah, you heard that right. This mess could lead to some positive changes that make the WNBA stronger and safer for everyone involved. Sometimes, a little chaos is needed to create something beautiful. If the league steps up and makes these changes, we could be looking at a whole new era of women's basketball, where players feel safer, fans feel heard, and the game itself reaches new heights. However, while the potential upside is huge, there are challenges too. Tightening rules on physical play could slow the game down and alienate fans who love the intensity. Balancing safety and excitement will be key, but if done right, it could elevate the entire sport, not just for stars like...
That's not a natural act of you contest a shot and then all of a sudden your hand turns downwards and straight into the eye of the biggest star in the WNBA. It's not a natural act. And I called it out yesterday in real time watching the game. Hey, that was on purpose.
And get this, it's not just the WNBA that could benefit. These changes could trickle down to college basketball, high school leagues, and maybe even your local pickup games. We might be witnessing the start of a safety revolution in basketball. And it all began with one controversial eye poke.
What I am upset about is hey man, your meal ticket is under constant attack. There's been dirty plays all season. And again, I've admitted, some of them have been exaggerated. It's just typical rough play with girls. But there are some that it's just been dirty. And Dijonai is one of these people that has a real problem with Caitlin Clark.
Can you believe how this whole thing turned out? What started as a shocking eye poke has become a rallying cry for change in women's basketball. It's like the entire sport just woke up and said, enough is enough. Players, fans, and even the league itself are coming together like never before. They're not just talking about player safety anymore, they're demanding it. And it's not just about one incident or one player. This is about making the game better for everyone.
So when I go on national television and I bring up jealousy, envy, resentment, or whatever, I'm not saying it's not justified. If you are a WNBA player and you resent Caitlin Clark, it makes perfect sense because she's white and she's the golden girl that's considered the marketing savior for the sport.
You know what's really cool? This whole mess might actually lead to some positive changes. The WNBA could set a new standard for how sports leagues handle player safety and conduct. It's like they say, sometimes it takes a crisis to create real change. Who knows, maybe years from now, we'll look back at this moment as the turning point that made women's basketball stronger than ever. If you want to stay updated on how this unfolds, be sure to subscribe.
These ladies, and I'm a WNBA fan,
it's been a good season.
They cannot have fucked this Caitlin Clark thing up any worse if they tried.
It doesn't mean it wasn't growing in popularity over the last 2 to 3 years. But 3 years ago, WNBA was an afterthought.